Welcome, everyone. You're watching In the Crosshairs. I'm your host, Raquel Okyay, and my special guest today is Alan Chwick. Alan Chwick is a returning guest. Thank goodness he helped me out this weekend and filled in for me. And we are going to talk about the Second Amendment, past and present. Alan Chwick is really an expert in gun rights and all of these issues. He's an author and a writer and a organizer and gun enthusiast. So I'm very excited to have you on again. And not just that, Alan, I do want to say that all of the, I do get your messages when you leave me voicemails. And I do appreciate all of your advice. I had asked you to, follow my program and give me your feedback. And you have, and I appreciate it. And really, I consider you an expert and quite frankly, like a mentor, because over the years, you've taught me a lot about gun rights. So I appreciate you having me.
My pleasure. It's always a pleasure being with you.
Thanks so much, Alan. Okay, so as I was telling you yesterday, I've been reading this book, which I got at the Gun Rights Policy Conference for free, which is awesome. It's called Origins and Development of the Second Amendment by David Hardy. So I want to go ahead and plug the Gun Rights Policy Conference. It's coming up. It's September 21, 22, 23, and it's in Chicago. And it's a place where you're going to get a whole bunch of books just like this, and they're for free, and all kinds of material and speakers and experts on Second Amendment. It's a fantastic place to network. I'm really going to try and get there. I've attended several over the years, but it's a great event, and I just want to encourage everybody to go.
And the only thing I have to say about Chicago is please be exceptionally careful, because it's and I'll leave that be. I won't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
That might be part of the now.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So in this book, Alan, which I found so super interesting, I learned some things about the origins of the Second Amendment. And unlike the other amendments in our Constitution, the Second Amendment has been around in history, or the idea of defending yourself, right, has been around in history for a really, really long time, like predating any kind of pro-religion, freedom of religion, freedom to vote, freedom of press. All of those things came kind of later in history. But the right to keep and bear arms has been something that's been, I believe, since the beginning of time. What do you have to say?
Well, that's very true. It predates pretty much even governments as groups came together in history thousands of years ago for mutual benefit. I was a farmer. That person was able to make linen out of flax for clothing. We came together and we began to barter. And protection did become a very important, self-protection that is, an important issue, because marauders would come. Jokingly, I always used to say, and it happens to be true if you ever watch the old cowboy movies, there's always a dog there, and it starts barking. Well, that's your first line of defense. Your second line of defense is you. So yeah, it's thousands of years, the concept of self-defense, which I could also call self-preservation as a group.
Right.
A little back history, if we might, most people aren't aware that when the Constitution was first written, the Bill of Rights was not in it. The Bill of Rights wasn't added until afterwards. To be exact, I think it was ratified 1891. Okay, and I know it was ratified in 1891.
Was it 1891? Okay.
1891, and it was 1889, if I remember right, is when they started to put together the amendments to add to the Constitution. Now, one important thing I think we have to speak about, to take a moment in the partial then, which is the creation, before we talk about even going back and coming forward, is some of the wording. I have a terrible habit of removing what we call the Oxford comma. So when I read the the Second Amendment, I see very, very simply the phrase, a well-regulated militia, comma, very important, but it's a Oxford comma, being necessary for the security of a free state, Oxford comma, very important, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The last part of that sentence is the actual right. What is the beginning? Well, it's a pretext. They're talking. And the big issue always comes down to is that word militia.
Yeah.
What is a militia? Well, as far as history is concerned, the militia is really was nothing more than communities of people that came together for the common good of their local protection, similar to what the original design of the National Guard is. Because the concept is that a person from your state will not fire upon a person within his own state. He's going to protect it. Just like the police of a town protect that town.
Right.
And
yeah,
our founders were
also, I mean, the idea is that there's robbers, there's people that you come into contact with in your travels, and you have to be able to be in a position where you can protect yourself, your goods, your family, your property, and yeah. How else are you supposed to do that? There's so many references in this book, before even firearms, the idea was, knives,
right.
weapons, any kind of weapon that, can be used to protect yourself.
Well, a weapon is anything. My favorite one is you're sitting on a chair. I pick up that chair and swing it at your head. It's a weapon. A weapon of opportunity, but it's a weapon. Anything that protects you.
I use the example of the baseball bat.
Yes.
A lot of people in New York City, that's sort of, you can't have firearms in New York City. It's sort of, illegal.
Right.
But as a form of protection, I know people who keep their baseball bats, by their door, by their front
yes.
door, as a means to protect themselves in case there's a burglar.
I'm going to give you a little additive because I was told, and now I'm not a lawyer, but I was told by a lawyer. For instance, a lot of people carry a baseball bat in their car for that same reason.
Yeah.
And what he recommended was that you should carry a baseball with you, because if you have to swing the bat at somebody, the other person's attorney is going to say, well, you brought that bat purposely, waiting for an event to swing at somebody's head. And now your answer is, oh, no, I play a lot of baseball, and I keep a baseball and a ball and a mitt in the car as well. Right. Now, I carry, in addition, a knitting needle on the side of my driver's seat. I also have another knitting needle, and I also have a skein of yarn. And just so happens my grandmother taught me how to knit. I will use that as a weapon if I need to. And as I said, well, I had it there because I stop at a light and I knit. I even have a little piece of knitting that I've done, and it sits there.
That's smart. I'm gonna keep a baseball with my bat now. So you always give me great advice, Alan.
Yeah, well, put a mitt with it also.
I want to ask you something.
Before you go on, it just answers that question because you always hear it. You went out today to hurt somebody. That's what your gun. Well, here, same thing with the bat, and same thing with the knitting needle. That says, no, I didn't go out to do that.
Works perfectly. I think it's a great idea. I'm going to be a naysayer. A lot of people say in response to your reaction that you bring, you want to be able to protect yourself out in the public. Their answer will be, what are you, paranoid? What do you have to sleep with your firearm? You have to take it everywhere? Do you think, and there's people out to kill you? You're just paranoid. I get that answer sometimes. What would be your response?
My response is certainly not paranoia. The old thing is whatever the weapon is, and I'll use that term, whether it be a knife, or a gun, it's better to have it on you when you need it than not to have it when you really do need it. Statistically, very few of us ever get to pull a gun on somebody. I live in rural America. 35 minutes if I do a 911 call for a policeman to come. Yes, I have dogs. They bark. They will let me know. But I walk around my house with my gun on the side because if I have to run to get it, I will be dead. I live in an area where there's lots of meth people and so on.
Scary.
I'm not going to mention where so the meth people won't come and get me. But I'm not picking on them. Some of them are nice people too. You know, they're nice people too, some of them. But I live in farming America. And yes, I walk out with my gun. But my gun doesn't only protect me because it gives me the ability to say, I protect 100 people around me as well. The same concept as the policeman who walks into a store and everybody feels, I'm a little safer now. Well, you don't know that I carry, but you're a little safer now too.
Right.
I'm also not medically crazy. I don't do silly things. I don't take it out in public and scare people.
Right.
I've been a gun person since the day I was born and fell out of a crib. The guns were already there. Literally. So guns have been around me. To me, they're just a natural item.
All right, how old were you when you shot your first firearm?
5 years old.
That is so sweet.
A small single shot Higgins, purchased from Sears and Roebuck, single shot 22 caliber rifle. Nowadays,
that was a popular.
Well, it was J.C. Higgins. J.C. Higgins, that's what it was. And actually, I still have it.
Nice.
It's an adult size, but nowadays you can get junior and kid size rifles. On a side note, I used to teach up in Freeport, New York at their junior program for 22 years. Right. And we taught kids from 5 to 21, and we make rifles. As long as they're lawful in length and barrel, we would cut them down to size for kids to use. But
that's fantastic.
That question is an important one.
I did want to mention to the audience that you are a gun trainer, and specifically for youth.
Yes.
Yes, and you've done that on Long Island. You did that for 22 years. So you had a lot of kids go through your program. Do you also teach them the history of the Second Amendment and those kind of topics?
We would talk about it, but our thrust was always safety. And we worked with some phenomenal kids. We worked with literally a 35-year-old Asperger's syndrome man who literally was mentally no more than a 15-year-old. And he focused in ADHD kids. Calm down.
How do they do with
Oh,
firearms?
excellent.
Yeah.
In fact, once an ADHD kid calms after the first 2 shots, and he knows his goal is to hit that center of the target, that's all he wants or she wants to do. Statistically, there are a few females that are ADHD. There are more males, of course. But they focus. Right. And it gives them something to focus on, which actually then calms them down. We also had a young lady in 2000 go to the Olympics in Australia.
One of your students?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes. But the main thing is an interesting correlation we found was kids who shoot well, marksmanship-wise we're talking, are, first of all, good kids in general, but they have great grade points in school. Because what does it take to be good in school? First thing is concentration. And to fire a firearm well, concentration is the first key. So
right.
yeah.
It's just like also other sports, right? So I think
Yes.
it's beneficial to have your children, you know, in extracurricular activities because it does teach you other important lessons, teamwork,
Yes.
you know, concentration.
Well, shooting is not a team sport, basically.
Not shooting teamwork, right? I guess.
Okay. You can shoot within a team,
Yes.
but your goal is always to better your own personal score within that team.
Well, it's like track. Kids do a lot of track.
Yes.
That's also sort of a singular, while they play on teams,
Right.
it's really about getting the highest score.
Correct. And your score moves up within your team, does good for your team. Same thing. Yes.
Very cool. That's so exciting that you were able to train, and it's still going.
Yes, as a matter of fact, the coach retired, semi-retired from there, back and forth yet. I retired. We left the program in the hands of a very, very good gentleman, and he's actually increased the number of kids. It's not a small program. The program meets literally every Sunday from September to June, as long as it's not a holiday, weekend, or bad weather. So it's about 25 to 28 sessions a year.
How many kids graduating?
Well, you always have, like, you know, a group going in and a group coming out. But the program right now has, as membership, closing this past June, well over 100 kids in the program. And that's kids from 5 to 21. Okay, 5-year-olds start on BB, then they move up to pellet, and then to firearm, because New York State law has a law about when you can handle a firearm.
Right.
Okay.
Very,
New York has
thank you so
laws
much
on
for sharing
everything.
that with us. It's really awesome what you do. Okay, so just getting back to the what I found in this book that I've been reading. In fact, the Second Amendment, or the idea of protecting yourself, goes back to the time of Julius Caesar.
Yes.
And that was a point that both Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine both were, you know, talked about this as part of the reason why we needed the Second Amendment. So, you know, like I was saying earlier, some of our other freedoms, the freedom to keep and bear arms, predates all of those freedoms. And this one says, recently historians have traced the individual legal duty to own arms and be skilled in their use to 690 AD.
Yeah.
And concluded that it is in fact older than our oldest records.
Yeah. Well, just look at anything. Early on, thousands of years ago, you're walking down a road, minding your own business. You're walking out to your field to pick whatever, vegetables, you know, or pen sheep. I don't care what it is. And an army comes down the road, and just for the fun of it, they swing a sword and cut your head off. Okay, that was life.
Right. Scary.
You were a peasant. They were a little bit more elite.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that you were going to fight them because they were more than them, but the concept was is you never knew where something was going to come from. So you always had to protect. The Greeks with the basic of Molon Labe. The weapon was their savior to keep their society. Okay? Very, very crucial to the society of their freedom. They would rather die than be a slave. Now, freedom of speech goes back a long way too, because it's been shown that Speech is one of the basic necessities to having a free democracy. Freedom of speech. But if you can't protect that freedom, well, you lose it.
Well, I have, according to this publication, in 1680, a royal judge had not hesitated to warn publishers that to print or publish any news books or pamphlets of any kind is illegal. So
Yeah.
this, 1680, British rule. It kind of sort of warms up to the reasons why those Bill of Rights were put into place, because they really weren't rights that were protected over the years, like they are in America.
Right and to by the government. These
Alan, you're cutting out just a little bit. That's much better.
I mean, the weather here is good.
Yeah.
As I said, they're not rights granted by the government, and that's important to say. They're inalienable. They're ours by God, and I don't care whose God it is.
Right.
Jewish, Christian, Muslim, I don't care.
Right.
Okay? But they're enumerated in the Bill of Rights. That's all. You have the right to speak and have redress against your government. Of course, if I say something to you and it's wrong and I besmirch you, you're going to sue me. But that's not freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is the ability to speak up against your government without redress. Because remember, our founders just fought a war. And what was that war over? Being pushed down under a thumb of the British government. And if you look at history, the Brits were pretty nasty individuals. I mean, even during the Revolutionary War, they would capture American soldiers and they would force them to fight against the Americans. Okay? They were nasty. And on board the ship, if you did something wrong, I mean, they keel haul you. That's pulling you underneath the boat, around the keel. So we just fought a war. And the war was over what? Repression.
Freedom.
Okay. Taxes. Freedom. Yes. Okay. And of course, we all know the routine that before the revolution broke out, the king said, well, let's take all their guns from them. So basically, why? So we can quash them.
Right.
So we stop and we say, why the Bill of Rights? We fought a war. And we found that when the government has the guns, it's no good. So we created a country, and I'll call it an experiment. No, that was completely different than any other country in the world at that time. Nobody had a constitution. You are the sovereign. I am the sovereign. The government works for us. Except for maybe now we're having some problems. But they work for us.
Right. And the government also protects the minority. So if you have the situation...
That's a moral issue. That's a moral issue after the fact. Because our Constitution just said that they're to protect us from the greater we get attacked.
But when I say minority, I mean in the event that if we didn't have law and order or the rule of law, right? So you had, the robber, going off, attacking people. You don't have, I kind of just lost my whole point, actually.
Well, I think I understand where you're going with it.
I forgot where I was going with that.
But that's not even what the government is supposed to do. Your small community would get together.
A minority. Wait. I know what I was saying. Okay, so your point, whatever your position is on whatever matter, is disagreeable to the people in your community. And they decide that they don't really like your opinion, Right. And they're going to come down hard on you. They're going to gather you up. They might beat you up. They might even hang you. They might kill you because they dislike you so much. Here comes law and order. Law and order,
Okay.
right? Law and order gets to say, no, you don't do that, because that person gets to have a hearing and a trial before their peers, or, a jury of their peers. And that's the Constitution, right? So in
Right.
my opinion, it protects the minority thought.
Well, I tend to agree, but the government only sets the rule. The moral and the ethic comes from the locality. People are basically good, I think, because if we weren't, we wouldn't have so many people in the world today. We would have killed a hell of a lot more than we've done. Man would have never survived. So people wanted to join together for the common good. So the common good then would say, well, we now have 100 people together in this little community. Let's appoint somebody to be a sheriff. We give him some power. Then we'll appoint a judge, because we're following the Constitution that set these guidelines. The guidelines are, you are innocent until proven guilty. I can't take you out and hang you without some level of due process and some, proof. Okay? Right. And where does the burden of proof fall? The system has that also. Even civilly, if I sue you, I have to prove what you did wrong. You don't have to prove what you didn't do. You just have to counter what I say. But in my complaint, I have to say what you did. Right. And prove it in a court. And now I have to prove it. I have to prove it. Right. You have to, you may not even get up and do anything because I may not have made my point. And the judge and or the jury, if there's one there, may just say, well, Raquel wins. Alan, you lose. Pay her legal fees. Okay? So even civilly, they set these guidelines. Okay? But really, it all started thousands of years ago in these little teeny-weeny communities. Yeah. Law and order became a natural concept. And the other thing is that what if you have your property and your land, and really it's your livelihood, and you're traveling over to, another state because, with your horse and carriage, and you're traveling to another state to visit grandma, and who's going to watch your items? You're not going to get back. You don't expect to be back for a couple of weeks. So who's going to watch your items? And I think that was another reason why there was that need to organize. Yes. Locally, to have someone else watch over again, that's items. What that community does. These small communities, a small town, and it all slowly came together. I was able to hunt with a bow 1,000 years ago. The guy next to me couldn't. But he was able to make arrowheads, which I could do, but if he made them while I went out to hunt, I'll feed him and he'll give me arrowheads to put on my arrows. We begin to coalesce into a working model of something. And that is the natural form that it followed. Now our founders, as I said, looked back in history. Some of the Bill of Rights, of course, were common sense. The British used to stick soldiers in your home. So, of course, they said that you couldn't quarter soldiers in a home, not during the time of war. But freedom of speech is a basic necessity for a democracy. And again, everybody, I remember, we're not a democracy. What are we really? We're a democratic republic. I understand, but we're using the term in general, okay? Right. I have to say that because somebody will yell at you or me for that one, okay? But a democracy cannot survive without the freedom of speech, the conveyance of ideas. Mm-hmm. And if you look at what's going on today, we have people trying to stop the freedom of speech, which is very scary. Let's not get into who they are or whatever. But
speaking of freedom of speech, what do you think about Alex Jones being just literally kicked off of social media and unable to speak his mind?
Personally,
I don't think he incites violence. I've watched his program or heard him a few times. I may not agree with a lot of the things he says, but I don't mind, listening if I want to. I could take it or leave it. But the point is that why is there some entity that has now removed him from all social media, YouTube, internet? What's up with that?
Well, we'll have to get into politics then. But first of all, to answer the first part of the question, it is disgusting. Totally disgusting. As you said, first of all, anybody can just turn off the channel. They don't have to listen to him.
Yeah.
Okay? And did he incite riot, let's say, like Maxine Waters did when she said, get in everybody's face? Okay? I don't really want to go there yet, let's say. But no.
Double standard. No. Double standard. You can't
yes. And I firmly believe he has the right to say any conspiracy he wants. A conspiracy is nothing more than a theory. I have a theory.
It's not a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. And some elements it could be true. You could weigh it yourself. Whatever you decide.
The problem is, though, is today Alex Jones and everybody, a lot of people have said this, who's next? And he's a conservative in theory or in practicality, let's say.
Yeah.
And they picked on him. Now, you asked a different question as to who. Well, we get into the politics of it. I would personally, because I am a staunch conservative, I think it is a movement of the left who is showing tremendous signs of that socialism is good. And under socialism of any kind, whether it leads to communism or not, free speech is not good and has to be shut down. And we can see, we have people getting into our Congress now who are running in primaries and probably will be elected. They have no thought or understanding of what this country actually stands for because they've been taught socialism all their lives. I'm carefully trying just not to mention names because I don't want to start those fights.
But, I know exactly who you're talking about. From the Bronx or Westchester,
Yes.
She lives in Westchester, but she's running for Congress and
well, she's going to win from her district, and to say it's hysterical that she has a $300,000 Boston University economics degree, and if I may say it, and this is a personal opinion, not yours, she's an economic idiot. In other words, I'll take the blame. I said it, not you. Okay? You listen to what comes out of her mouth. Free, free, free. And when asked how it gets paid, she has no idea.
Right. She
didn't even know that tax dollars came from the people until it was told to her. Exactly. Thank you. Twilight Zone. But it grows worse. It grows worse because right now they are a minority of the Democratic Party. And the mainstay of the Democratic Party 35, 40 years ago were able to sit down with the Republicans and come up with an agreement. Give and take. I lost some and you lost some and we can agree.
Compromise.
Can't compromise anymore. You look at them with running for a point to the Supreme Court. Whether they like him or not, they voted for him almost unanimously for a lower court position. The Democrats won't even speak to him when he wants to go around and speak to them and tell them how he feels within the limits of what he can say. They're not even meeting with him. Now, what kind of a fool, I don't care, Republican or Democrat or anything, does not want to listen? I listen to everybody. One of my followers is Bette Midler, and she's a leftist all the way. And she follows me on Twitter.
Very nice.
I'll listen. She makes nasty comments into my tweets, but so what? I give her the opportunity to speak. She doesn't attack me. I mean, if she attacks me, I mute her or block her. But she doesn't. And knowing what your opponent is doing and saying, to me, is one of the most important things.
You sound just like my father. My father was also really a staunch conservative and followed politics very heavily. But he told me the same thing. I was complaining about, the New York Times is just ridiculous, that I can't read it anymore. And it was during the Bush term. And they were bashing Bush at like every other page. I couldn't get the news. I'm reading the paper because I want to get the news, and I'm not getting the news. And I was complaining to my dad. And I said, I'm not going to read it anymore. I'm done, And he said, no. You have to read the New York Times because you have to see what the enemy is saying.
That's right. The old say is have your friends close and keep your enemies closer. You don't know what they're talking about. Now, do we feel that they're talking about some crazy stuff? Yeah, I do. But I want to know where they're pointing at any given time. And for me, I see them moving towards things. Now, they're not embracing, the mainstay is not really embracing the socialist side of it, but yet they are moving more left of center for themselves. And I think it's a problem.
And they're loud.
You have to.
They're loud because they have the media on their side. And that combination means that small, very leftist portion of the Democrat Party, they seem to be so loud. And they have this microphone because of the media. But the reality is that most Americans are just not. A lot of Americans are immigrants, and they've come from countries that have suffered through communism. And I'm going to go ahead and tell my story, if you don't mind.
No, I don't. But before you say it, one little thing, and because I hate cutting you off, because I know the story and it's wonderful.
Okay. Did I say it on the last time? I don't want to repeat it.
No. We've spoken about it, though, and you've told me. But the main important piece that you're going to get to, but you're not going to use the words, is assimilation. Because immigration without assimilation is occupation. Your father, my great-grandparents, wanted something different. They came from communist countries.
Right.
But before they were communist, the turn of the 18th to the 1900s. But they wanted a new life. They wanted to learn English. Some of them became citizens and so on. But now you tell your story because it's delightful about your dad.
Well, my father was Cuban, and my grandfather was Postmaster General under Batista in the Cuban government. And when Castro came around, promoting free elections, free speech, and so on, my father got part of that, became part of that revolution, But really, Castro ended up being, delivering something very different than what he promoted, right? So it really wasn't about free elections and freedom. What occurred as soon as Castro came into office was the confiscation of people's property. And if they didn't give up their property, they were shot dead. So it's a very serious case. People, once Castro came over, everything changed. And my dad, who happened to be a writer for the newspaper in La Habana, he wrote against Castro, and he said, hey, he's not doing what he said he's going to do. And he literally got put in prison and sentenced to death. So for people out there who want to promote the idea that socialism, communism, equal share, that government has basically everything and doles out these little crumbs, doles out the crumbs. This is what happens to you when you say something against your government. You go to jail and you get sentenced to death. Do we want that in America? Of course not. And the only reason why my dad got out was because he had some connections with the Catholic Church, because he studied in the seminary. And they were able to pull some strings and get him on a ship to New York Harbor. He didn't get to go home. He didn't get to pack his bags. He didn't say goodbye to mom and dad. He didn't go say goodbye to his brother and sister. You know, he had to get on that ship. He had to get on that ship right then and there and go to New York Harbor, where he was able to get asylum through JFK, political asylum. Now, when my dad came here, the first thing he did was go to work, right? And he had a PhD at that point in philosophy and fine art. And but my dad went to, you know, work washing dishes. He didn't know the language yet.
Right.
Until, of course, he could learn the language, and, you know, eventually he would pursue his career, and he was the editor of a Spanish medical journal for most of his career in the States. But when it came to raising me and my brothers, my dad had a really, you know, strict thing about, you know, about loving America. And we had a replica of the United States Constitution on our living room wall my whole life. My dad he said, speak English with a really, try to, like, you have to, I'm going to do it, try to do it with a really heavy Cuban accent. So we live in America, or we speak English.
And he's right. He was right.
Thank you for letting me tell this story.
You know, but he wanted, and as I said before, to assimilate. And if he didn't, I know he did, but if he didn't, he wanted to make sure you did.
Yes.
And I say it that way because with my great-grandparents, some of them did not fully assimilate. They came out from the Ukraine and from the areas of Russia and so on, well before it went communist, but they saw what was happening. As I said, my people came to America about between 1890 and 1903. Those that did not fully assimilate made sure that their children did, because the assimilation was important. They knew what was out there, like your father did, what he went through. So it becomes important. And a lot of these kids over the last 35 years, even going to the expensive schools, are taught socialism. But again, the simplicity with the socialism is, you earned $100 this week, and I only earned $25, so I take from you to balance us out. Well, how are you going to feel? You're going to feel like crap and say, well, I worked 90 hours for that money, and he only worked for that little bit of money 10 hours. Well, I'm just going to work 10 hours too. Screw you all. Doesn't work.
Right.
Or as you take from the rich to give to the poor, eventually the rich don't have. How do you supply the money now? It doesn't work.
Right.
Okay? So
you also don't have any choice. You know, you really don't have any choice in your life. So, you know, say, you know, the government might think you're a great athlete. You're really tall and you're good at basketball, and, you know, we want this person to, we're going to go scouting, you know, the communist country for the most fit, best players, athletes. And now we're not going to ask them, right? It's not like you have a choice in the matter. It's not like we would really like you to join our team because you have fantastic ability and your shape and so on and so forth. And you get to say, yes, that's an awesome idea. Let me check with my parents, right? No. They take you. They make the decision for you. And if they decide that you're going to make a great chemist, guess what you're going to do for the rest of your life? You're going to be a chemist. There's no choice.
A little something on that note, actually. Somebody I know as a shooter, his name was Igor. He was from Russia. And at a very young age, he seemed to have a talent to be able to throw and hit things. So eventually they taught him to shoot. Igor, that's all Igor ever did, was go to Olympics as a shooter.
As a shooter.
And he came, and well, you know, as a marksman. And he came to the United States. And I once saw him stand. He was talking to somebody, and he had a pistol in his hand. And I'm going to move so you can see my arm go out. And he stood there like this with his arm pointing to a target. And he's talking this way to somebody for like 5 minutes. And that arm is up there. And all of a sudden, he just, without anything, he just turns, takes a shot, and comes back and talks. And it was a dead-on bullseye. Because this is all he did. They trained him from like the age of 4. But another little funny, not funny story, but a story similar to your father, somebody currently that I know from Ethiopia, he is an Oromo, which is a sect of Ethiopians, and he had to leave Ethiopia. He was a writer, a journalist there, and of course the Ethiopian government did not like him, and he had very little choice. Without, like you said, your father couldn't go home and say goodbye or nothing. He basically was engaged to be married, and he just had to pick up and leave. And he came here and did get asylum. Right. And just a few short years ago, he became an American citizen.
Nice.
And he does fight for the Oromos, who are a form of, I will use the term genocide, though the UN does not classify it. It's not enough people that we've killed to make it genocide. I love that. They have a number. Very similar to your story of your father, that he wants to be. He wants to assimilate.
Yeah.
He would love to go home one day and bring democracy with him. Okay? But until then,
my father actually felt, sometimes like a traitor. So in his heart, what he really wanted to do,
go home,
fight for freedom at home.
Right.
Fight for that freedom at home. But he was put in that position that it's like die or leave.
Well, but also look at the numbers. The man is smart enough to know that there's not enough for us to win.
Right.
And it's sad what the United States government did in the 60s with the Bay of Pigs. Let's not get into it, but
my father was in Florida training. I mean, that's how much it meant to him to defeat communism in his homeland, Cuba.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a love of country.
Really see how actually people, you all can see. You really just have to go to the library and look it up on communism and look it up and read the firsthand accounts of people who've actually gone through it. You'll see, at least get a different perspective, because it's really offensive to me when people like that one particular congresswoman, potential candidate, when she talks about these communist socialist theories, it's actually very offensive to me. Because number one, she doesn't really know what she's talking about, and it's dangerous.
Not at all.
It's dangerous. From my
that's the words. That's the words that I actually used just recently in a tweet when I responded to somebody, and I just said, her district will elect her, and she is dangerous to the American way. But she's only one. Well, actually, she's not one right now, because there's another one from out, I think it was Missouri, who won't go into the religious side of it, who just will be elected in November. She won the primary in the Democratic Party. And she's one of these people that not deaf to America yet, because she's here, but she's definitely, we'll call it, not a lover of Jews, and has spouted that often in her life before running for office. So this is not good.
It's not good at all. Terrible.
No. And I was raised.
Do the Republicans have a candidate against her? It's just an unwinnable.
I'm not fully sure. I haven't gone into it yet. I always wait to see as the primary is complete before you start making your judgments. She did win her primary on the Democratic side.
Right. Yeah.
It is very frightening. because over time, our nation will change because of immigration. And I'm not saying I'm anti-immigrant. I'm not. I believe in bringing people here that want to come, that want to be here and assimilate. That's the magic word. But to come and not wanting to assimilate, as I said, immigration without assimilation is occupation. And occupation leads to takeover. So,
and I want to add to that. I want to add to that point. Another thing that I think it does, and I think in some cases it's done on purpose. So when you're not assimilating and you're not speaking the language, it's very difficult to advance. So I'm going to give you an example. So if you have some Cubans, and they do this, and they're cleaning people. They clean hotel rooms. They don't speak English. Okay, so they live in the Cubans in like Miami, for instance. They live in these little communities. They all speak Spanish. They all work as cleaning people because they can't get any other job. So it becomes like a cycle of poverty. Of course, it becomes a cycle of poverty. So generation after generation after generation, well, you don't have enough money with your income from cleaning houses, so then now you're going to supplement that income with welfare, with food stamps. And then once that cycle happens, it's very difficult for families to get off of it. So it literally keeps your community down. No one is asking you to change your culture. Your culture remains intact. Nothing can take my culture away from me, which I love. I live my culture, okay? But I want to be successful. I want my children to be successful. And in order for me to be successful in the United States of America, well, I'm going to need to know what our country stands for. And I'm going to need to speak its language.
That's right.
Yeah.
Go to France.
It's in my best interest, by the way. So I would be better off speaking English, obviously, than being in that Cuban Spanish family that is cleaning hotel rooms generation after generation. And I have nothing wrong. I don't have anything against people cleaning. Okay, it's a job, and then
No.
But the idea is that shoot for the stars, settle for the treetops.
Why even settle for that? Settle for the star. But I agree with that, but just simply go to France and emigrate there and see the first thing they tell you. They're not going to speak English to you.
No, they don't.
They're going to speak French. They also have a national language, which we don't, which is, I never understood why the founding fathers didn't do that. But go to any country and want to emigrate and see what they tell you. You're going to learn the language. You're going to learn our history. In fact, most people who go through the system to become a citizen know more about our country than the kids coming out of elite colleges today, because they get no civics class. Civics 101 does not exist.
It's on purpose, Alan. But
Oh, yes, it was done on purpose. And if I may throw in my particular piece of politics, it started roughly in the late 1950s. Saul Alinsky, the game is being played for the last 45, 50, 55 years. Get rid of civics.
Hillary Clinton was a student of Saul Alinsky, wasn't she?
Who?
Hillary.
Oh, well, she believed in Saul Alinsky. And one of the most frightening things...
She's openly said that, so it's not a secret.
Yes? Oh, well, yeah, she's got some interesting mentors in her life. But even the kids that run around, and when I hear the kids singing a John Lennon song known as Imagine.
Oh, yeah, we talked about this.
Listen to that song closely. It's Saul Alinsky from start to end. No borders. Everything is happy. Well, where's your food coming from? Like the person said.
From the sky.
Yeah, like the person who I just read a little thing where somebody said, stop killing animals, go to the supermarket where the animals are not hurt. Well, how do you think the animal gets into the wrapper, you fool?
Yeah, that's totally idiotic.
But to get back into
public education.
Yes. To get back on the subject, the founding fathers were brilliant, in my opinion. They had an experiment that was different than any other country in the world. They said, we're not going to have a sovereign person hang over us and tell us what to do. We will be the sovereign. We are the army. We are the military. We tell you what to do. And it's brilliant. And it scared the hell out of the world. And then people started to say, I like it. Why do people want to come here? The system works. Whether it be the right to bear arms, or the right to free speech, or the right to not self-incriminate yourself. And the 10th Amendment is an important one that most people even forget about. And there is a group called the 10th Amendment organization. And one of my favorite words is, and I've done a lot of writing on it, is nullification. You sit on a jury and don't like the law that's being pushed in your face by a judge. You can nullify that law. You nullify it. Okay? And it doesn't have to be a constitutional issue.
And are we doing that? Are we doing that? Are juries nullifying laws because they can?
Well, they can, but they don't know it because the judges give them instructions. And people who go out and give pamphlets on nullification are usually chased away from the courthouses, even though they're on public ground. Okay, that's the FIFA group. I can look up what that stands for, but the FIFA organization. Wonderful group of people. I'm a firm believer in nullifying. The law is bad and the public agrees, do it. Kill it right then and there. Set a precedent. But we have an experiment here. And as everybody has said in the past, and I forget who coined it, we will not disappear from the outside. We will be taken over from the inside. And that's the scary part. We will lose the republic from the inside. With people like our Bronx person. Again, I'm avoiding the name. We don't have to say it. Why are we going to promote her, you know?
Right. We don't have
to.
But you and I, and probably most of my viewers will know exactly.
Right. Exactly. And this woman from Missouri that I think it is, or the head of the head and the second person at the DNC listening to them. These are the people that will destroy our republic.
I agree with you there, Alan, for sure.
So.
Okay, we are definitely down at the bottom at the end of the show, and I think that was the good last word.
Excellent.
You want to add anything before we go?
Here.
You want to show us your firearm real quick?
Oh, this is one of my little favorites. Can you see that? It was a $75 Model 15 from a policeman. I sent it off to Smith & Wesson. They turned it into a Model 14. And it's a target gun. This is not a carry gun. It weighs about 9 pounds. It's pretty heavy.
Wow, it looks heavy.
It's an old 38 caliber revolver, and it shoots like a dream.
Wow. And how heavy is the trigger?
Oh, well, on the regular pull of the trigger, let me show everybody. It is empty.
Yeah.
So I don't handle live guns on camera. On double action, pulling it and pulling the hammer back, it's about a 12-pound trigger. But if I pull back and cock the hammer, and just breathe on the trigger, it's a 1 pound hammer. 1 pound trigger, I mean.
Okay. That's a beautiful gun. And those were the guns that law enforcement used all the time.
Well, the model originally, I mean, I have a Model 15 police revolver upstairs that happens to be my house gun that lays by my bed next to the shotgun.
I love you.
Well, as I said, I live in rural America. I have to be able to defend my home. And look, I'm also, besides everything I do, and with kids, I happen to be a federally licensed gun dealer. I'm a gunsmith, and I'm a computer junkie since 1960. So what can I tell you?
God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you. And Have a good day.
I love you. I don't say that to everybody.
I know. There's only 2 of us you say that to. And I know I'm one of them.
You're one of them. Thanks so much again, Alan. And I'm sure I'll have you back soon enough. It's been a great show.
You have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Get away. Bye.